Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're going to kick it back up for the last chunk of the symposium. Still action-packed for the next 2 hours before the reception. So we're gonna start off with a panel. This is AI and humans in teams, and I will let them introduce themselves and get underway.
Hi, I'm Susanna Palitz. I was a panelist, but our moderator, Joel Chan, is ill. He may or may not be asleep or watching. Hello, if you are. Get better. That's your job, not attending this. So I will go ahead and just introduce the panelists and myself, and then I will ask questions. So starting over there is Susan Campbell, an associate research scientist at UMD Arliss and also a senior lecturer at the UMD Info College. She earned her PhD in psychology from the University of Maryland. She's a cognitive psychologist by training and has worked on a variety of applied problems. So we are a multidisciplinary panel, so you know. I'm not going to do the full bios for everybody, just so you know. Maureen Carpuot, is that right? Okay, is an associate professor of computer science here at UMD, conducts research in natural language processing and design technology that helps people communicate no matter what language they speak. And she received her PhD in computer science and MPhil in electrical engineering from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and a sorry, I just realized this is French. Diplôme d'ingénieur from the French Grande École Supélec. Is that almost right?
Yes. Thank you.
Stephanie Valencia is an assistant professor at the UMD Info College, and she earned her PhD in human-computer interaction at Carnegie Mellon University. She uses participatory design to explore how different design materials, such as AI and physical computing devices, can be used to create agency-increasing, augmentative, and alternative communication systems. I am Susanna Palitz. I'm like, why am I reading my own bio? I'm an associate. I even know theirs, like what, except for the French. I'm an associate professor at UMD Info. I have my PhD in social personality psychology from UC Berkeley, and I focus, if one can call it focusing, on teams, creativity, technology, and culture. So, hello, everyone. So I will start us with the first question, which you're welcome to answer as whoever wants. What are some definitional issues with AI and or teams that bother you in the conversation of the role of AI in teams? Rather than defining it, just what's something you wanted to rant about?
Well, I can get started.
Yeah.
So as someone who's been working on developing what now everyone calls AI for about 25 years, I think one thing that bothers me today is that AI is used in a way that is so broad that it's not clear what it means anymore. It means anything and everything. And so when thinking about how to use AI technology, what the implications might be, what harms it might cause, how to use it within teams or in other settings, I think it's just very hard to talk about AI in general because it can mean anything. And like trying to be more specific about what kind of technology do we actually mean is really important.
Hello. Yes, I would second that as well. I think when we talk about AI, it can become, like, especially in HCI, we've been seeing a lot of these kind of topics around like magic or kind of the emoji critique that I don't know if you saw that AI was being represented with like sparkles to represent like, okay, there is a generation gonna happen or generative AI gonna happen, but that can be a little bit misleading as it is, we're not talking about the functionality or kind of what data is using to kind of create the experience. So yeah, I would say that being more specific about what type and what it is might help the discussions a lot.
And I'll just pile on there and say that we also don't define very well how we interact with the AI. So we have from the technology side, we have to say, okay, this is the tech we're using. But then from the human side, we use a lot of different interface modalities and different applications. And we just say, oh yeah, you're just going to use the AI. But that can look like a bunch of different things depending on what task you're trying to accomplish, or who you are, or how much agency that your boss has given you in terms of what you're able to use. So it's a really fraught space there.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll add that on the side of what's going on with a team, so there's all these definitional issues involving AI, but also a lot of the people who are talking, not exclusively, obviously, because there's us, but a lot of the people who are talking about AI in teams don't really understand teams. They don't understand the human team part, and so then they're sort of misaligning some of those definitional issues as well. And my phone went to sleep. I have another question for you. Oh, do you want to add?
I'll follow up on that one as
Yeah.
well. So there's the question of what's a team, and then there's a question of what's team-based interaction. So, when you talk to, I'll pick on the Army because there's not very many people from there here. Anything where you interact with a system is teaming, right? So anytime you're like flying a drone, you've got a little joystick that's human autonomy teaming. And so it's really like what we define as teaming is also really, really broad and not well defined.
Yeah. Another question is, what are some of the current kinds of AI that you think could play a role in human teams?
Start from this end, I guess. Sure. So we're seeing teaming with like autonomous systems for like exploration and things like that, right? So like a spot robot or some other like physical technology where you've got a person and they've got to interact with this physical technology. So that's one piece. I think that's the one that y'all aren't going to mention. So that's why I started with it.
Okay, well, I can continue. So the kind of technology that I think about a lot is around large language models, anything that helps process and generate natural language. And so clearly there are already tools out there that have the potential of really helping people communicate in teams, and also analyze, summarize. Like, we see these new options coming up on Zoom and any platform that we use to work online these days. And there's definitely a lot of potential, but at the same time, I think we just don't really know how to use this, how to design these yet, right? I think we're still very much in the mode where we're kind of trying things out, putting it out there, and then letting people like deal with it and trying to work out the kinks. But I think there's a lot of potential, but still a lot of work to do to figure out how do we actually incorporate these tools in team workflows in a way that really help, complement, support, and doesn't just end up creating more work or force people to adapt to the kinks of the technology.
Yeah, I would add another area could be in like teams where if we think about human-robot interaction, where there's been a lot of work on like multimodal interaction and having some sensors kind of monitor a team having a meeting, mostly like a collaborative meeting type of sort. And there's been great advances on like, okay, being able to cue the partner or the meeting participant who hasn't been speaking that much. The robot can like turn to them and kind of cue the other people like, oh, wow, we should let them speak as well. I think that's really interesting. And I'm very excited to see what will happen now with the possibility of getting more context from the conversation, from the meeting, tracking how it's going, and seeing if moderators or either physical moderators like agents, physical agents, or virtual agents can support that meeting dynamics. But it's going to be really interesting to study them because we really need to prevent kind of not desired outcomes, such as do people really want to be on the spotlight? What are people's kind of team dynamics? How they will change if they know they're being their data is being used to support this context-aware agent support moderation tasks. So I think a lot about that recently.
So I don't have much to add to that, but it did occur to me that I didn't introduce us as a whole, which is one of the goals here. Is that while we're all involved in the HCIL, we're also all involved in this organization called the Organizational Teams and Technology Research Society, or OTTERS. So if you're at all interested in anything teams and technology, please contact us. We have stickers with otters on them, and they're very cute. And we also have a speaker series, which we have speakers from anything teams and technology, not just AI and teams. So I just realized, oh, I didn't introduce that. I have nothing to add on what everybody else said, the answer to that question. So I will actually move to the next question, which is, okay, so you talked about what some kind of current kinds of AI. Are there any kinds of future that you can envision, cutting edge ways that AI can have a role in the human teams? The flying car of AI, one might say.
Well, I'm very excited about accessibility. So I think about how AI can help make meetings more accessible. So we're just talking about a lot of great work on supporting remote or hybrid interactions. And I wonder, like, AI is great, like large language models are great at like text-based tasks. So maybe like summarizing key ideas that can help people in a meeting remember what they're talking about, or even simplify the language on the go, or translate jargon on the go. I think that could be really helpful. Small tasks that could help make the meetings more accessible for different types of speakers, cultural backgrounds, like some sort of like AI support for that shared understanding. I think that could be really helpful in this context of access.
Yeah, so actually what came to mind was like related in the sense like kind of technology that could support these kinds of interactions and others, which is basically we have very siloed type of AI systems, I think, right? On the one hand, we have these large language models that are really good at processing text, that are starting to process also speech and images. And then in a completely different direction, we have more like robots that can manipulate things. And I think one thing that would be really exciting moving forward is having AI systems that can really move across modalities much more seamlessly and be able to interact with the world, while at the same time having all the knowledge that can be gathered from large amount of text. Of course, this raises all sorts of potential problems and harms and issues, and it would have to be done very carefully from the point of view of privacy and not harming people in the real world. But done right, that sounds like it could really open up so many possibilities for teams and beyond.
I'm not sure I have much to add to that. That would be really great. I think there's a lot to be done in like figuring out what humans are doing at any given time. So trying to understand, why things are the way they are in a team, and how that's good and how that may reflect a problem. And I don't know that, I'm not sure that we as people can even figure that out. So I'm not sure that that's, but while we're talking science fiction, it sounds like it would be really nice to have an AI that could look at the gestures people are making, or the the ways that they need support, and provide that support, rather than just kind of sitting in the background and waiting for somebody to query, pick up the red block or whatever. So yeah, I think that would be really helpful. And just in general, having systems that can react to context is something that we're not really great at yet. And it would be really, like, there's so much context in a team, there's so much teamwork, as it were, that people have to engage in as part of a team, that is not something that, like, we have the robots that can do the tasks now, right? So we separate the work in a team into the teamwork, making the team actually function, and then the task work, which is getting your job done, right? And so I think, we don't have enough of that team piece. Even though those systems are getting pretty good at the task, that they're not really great at the team. So that kind of interaction would be really great.
I would add to what all of y'all said. I agree. As a couple things. One is that as a Teams researcher, it'd be really great if, as a Teams researcher who studies team processes, which can take 1,000,000 years to do annotation on, it would be great if there is some way to speed up that process of annotation. And then the other one, building off of what Susan was saying, so like if you think about, I want AI to do the stuff that's hard for humans or that I don't want to do. So I would like an AI that could deal with the difficult team member who's not doing their work or is like being a jerk or undermining people. So I don't have to be like, excuse me, like, and because sometimes that backfires on the human. If you're like, why aren't you pulling your weight? You know, you don't say it right, and then they get mad at you. You know, so could an AI do that for me? I would love that. It just went away again. So I had many other questions. I mean, this may have already been answered. So what would you like an AI to do to support human teams? And they don't have to be synchronous teams. They can be asynchronous. They can be, you know, humans with multiple AIs, and multiple humans, you know, any combination. And that you may have already sort of said this, so if it's, yeah.
I was thinking, like, how can we call these AIs more specifically as well, right? Like, what type of model or support do people want? And like, could we call it a little smaller unit, right? But it's hard. So I think that's why we are experiencing what we criticized at the beginning. The AI umbrella is easier to refer to envision the future, but I think, like, I'm trying to think about a shorter word. But I think these context-aware models that can be reactive or proactive, about, I really like your example. Also in HRI field, there's been some work on like trying to read eye gaze behavior to understand if in a team collaborating on a physical task, the person wants to reach for an object before, so that the robot can actively prepare for that. And so I think these context-aware models could be really interesting, but they do raise the question of all the data that's required and kind of all the things we'll know about people. And so I think we need more critical work as well on like what would happen if this were to be built and all of that.
Yeah, so following up on that, I think what I'm trying to think about a lot these days and is how we can use AI tools like large language models in a way that's truly complementary and that doesn't just try to mimic what a human would be doing within a team. So for instance, I work a lot with machine translation to automatically translate what someone might say in one language into another. And, at first I came at this problem, in a perhaps typical technologist way, like, let's translate everything, we'll just replace the human interpreter and that will solve all our problems. And then of course, that's not true. And I think, thinking about how to integrate AI tools is really important. So therefore, for instance, some of these things that are hard, fully replacing them might we gain some things, but we also lose others, right? So in the case of we have multiple people in the same room trying to speak a common language, sometimes there's value in the person trying, like Susanna, said the name of my French school in French at the beginning, and I appreciate that, even though it would have been easier to have an AI system to say it for her, right? But there's something valuable in the human connection in doing that, and in using the foreign language, or sometimes using the native language, or there's value in the language choice, and just saying, well, I can use an AI to make that go away. It's probably not great. We're going to lose something there. Similarly, like all the examples you gave, the fact that the AI tool is not subjected to the same social rules that we are and will not suffer the consequences in the same way, that seems like something really interesting that we should really exploit. And I think we just don't do that enough. So I've been trying to train myself to, turn off my technologist mind that says like everything has to be seamless, and just try to instead try to figure out how we can expose different parts of the technology, including in the ways it might go wrong, and figure out how we can design with that in mind. And what does that look like? I'm not sure yet, but I think it's a productive direction to think about moving forward.
Yeah, and to build off that, one thing that I kind of, I guess, worry about as a cognitive psychologist is thinking about which of these processes we're using that seem tedious are also important. So I was like, oh, we'll have an AI take notes for me. And I'm like, but taking notes is actually how I organize my thoughts. And so if I have an AI take notes for me, then I'm not actually like engaging with what the person is saying and figuring out what's important in it. I can just offload that to the AI, and then I don't remember what the conversation was, right? Because that process of writing things down was an encoding process that I needed to go through. And so it's, and sometimes that's fine. Like if I don't know how to get somewhere because I've been using Google Maps, that's all right. But if I don't remember like what my team that I lead is doing because I wasn't paying attention in the meeting, then that's bad, right? So trying to figure out like which things are important human tasks, even if they seem tedious. Having to hit the ball a whole bunch of times to make sure you know which way it's going to go. It's not the fun part of practicing, but you have to do it in order to get better. And so figuring out like what we have to do to make ourselves better at the system, or the Maureen's language example is perfect, right? Like to show that we care enough to learn the other language, or to show that we care enough to try the other language. And I guess, on some sense, if you're firing somebody, like that has to be a person. But if you're just saying like, dude, chill, you're dominating the conversation, like that could be a robot, right? And maybe AI bias is actually going to help us there, because the person says, oh, the system that is impartial says that I'm talking too much. Maybe I am talking too much, versus my boss, which is, who is a woman. And, maybe I think that, whatever, right? Like I judge her for telling me what to do, versus, here, like this is just the robot saying that you're talking too much. Maybe you just slow down, So yeah, figuring out what's important for the person and what's important for the system, and how we can leverage the fact that it is an AI to cheat too, right? Like not cheat on your classes, but to cheat and say, here, this AI is going to tell you that you need to change this thing that you would be embarrassed to get feedback from a person about, but the AI says like, hey, you need to make more eye contact. Okay, well, a person's not judging my eye contact here. That's just a computer telling me what I should be doing.
So we've talked a lot about possible opportunities of AI in teams, and now I'd like to have you all talk about what are some of the challenges you see with AI being involved in human teams. And I'm actually going to pair that with the other question, which was, how might AI be deployed to help a human teams, but actually end up being counterproductive or unpleasant? So either of those questions or both is. I'm realizing I want to leave some time for other people questions. So,
sure.
Yeah.
So what Maureen said a minute ago about the amount of data that's required for this, I think, is a huge piece, right? Or Stephanie may have said that. Sorry. Attributing things to other members of the panel is apparently a skill I lack. But you need so much data, like it feels like the system is watching you to get that data. And then, where do those data go? Who has access to them? All of those questions about, who has the ability to see the data that goes into the system. And okay, maybe we say, all right, well, we're just not going to keep any of it. We'll just, use it to train, and then we'll let it go. But then if there's a problem, we can't go back and audit it. So there's a tension there with like, okay, we got this much data, that's too much, or it's not enough, or it's going to make people feel watched, or it's going to make people feel, exposed in some way. Like the system, like we all bend the rules, right? I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. We all bend the rules, and we go, oh yeah, I'm going to go around this door today or whatever, and the system won't do that, and so, or it can't be. Like self-driving cars are at least supposed to not be able to speed, right? Because you can't make your self-driving car do something illegal. but sometimes, you feel like you want to, and then the system won't let you. And so there's limits built in there that people maybe are not gonna want, because we don't see everything in such a rule-based way. So that's one thing, two things, I guess.
So yeah, connecting to these two ideas, what was coming to mind to me was the challenge of integrating all these tools while preserving human agency, which I think connects with, like you want to be in charge of the process and not have to follow specifically what the AI system has been trained to do. And that also relates to the privacy and the data collection angle. How can you have tools that work well for whatever your purposes might be without just giving away all your data for free? So I think balancing that is really tricky, and I think is going to be a real challenge moving forward.
I agree with all of that. I'm just, yeah.
So
What do you think, Susanna?
what do I think? Oh gosh. I mean, I think to me, one of the problems is like the societal problem of some of the, this is what Susan and I were talking about, like during lunch and snack, right? Which was some of the societal forces that are driving a lot of AI development are not necessarily like human-centered, user-centered kinds of things. And so, there's AI that's developed to sort of make money, cut labor costs, disempower workers, rather than take the load off of me of things I'd really rather not do, or things like that. And then you have the unanticipated, like, well, I'd rather not there be mosquitoes. This is an analogy. I'm hoping AI don't do this, but I don't want mosquitoes, but then if we kill all the mosquitoes, there's going to be ecological downstream effects, right? So it's like your note-taking, note-taking's a pain. Oh, it turns out it's important for retention and organization. Yeah, anyway, so a lot of all this. Do we have time to take questions from the audience? Does the audience want to ask questions? I see you, yes. Let's see. Should we give up one of our, here we go. Thanks.
Thank you. That was a great discussion. But I have a question regarding to the job market in AI. Actually, when I do the LinkedIn or Indeed, there actually right now the AI very hot. I agree, but there are not many job opening in AI, and the majority of them actually is recruit some kind of PhD level research, like scientists, and they are from like a very top university and publish very good paper. You can, and also those actually big company like NVIDIA or Meta, those they have opening. Would you comment on that first, and then in the future, do you think there will be more opening, and how the AI trend will formulate the job market? Thank you.
I can't speak to the PhD and AI job market. I will say that one of the things that we're working on in this project I've got with the Army is looking at how do we select people to use AI rather than selecting people to build AI, which is probably not really what you're interested in doing. But in the future, we're going to have, given the current trends, like there are going to be more AI systems. And so we need to figure out how to equip students and other professionals, soldiers, whoever, to actually use those systems to, the analogy that I use in that project is to drive the car, not to build the car. And so so we're trying to figure out, like, okay, how can we characterize what you need to be able to do in order to drive the car? But I think there's a lot of, part of what AI is doing right now is concentrating power into single spaces, right? So it's kind of channeling everything into, okay, we're going to have one AI engineer and they're going to do everything. And so therefore we want, somebody with a PhD from MIT in machine learning, blah, 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 right? and so they're saying, well, we're only going to do that once, and so we want to make sure that we have like this person. So I think as adoption grows more broadly, there are probably going to be more jobs, but it may not be immediate. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we're in a transition phase right now, right? Where there's like a lot of excitement in big companies with a lot of resources towards building models, like in these giant projects that build very large models that, encompass a lot of things that used to be different divisions within the company and so on. And so that's where like a lot of the PhDs with research experience, especially in building large language models, go. But I think moving forward, we are going to see, like AI machine learning becoming a skill that is just part of the toolbox of all like the software engineers who graduate with a computer science degree. And some of them not everyone is going to build large language models or whatever the AI tool is from scratch, right? But understanding how these models work, how to use them, how to adapt them, and so on, I think that's going to be a skill that's just going to be just distributed like in a lot of different jobs, not necessarily jobs with AI in the job title. And then beyond computer science, I think just like AI literacy is going to be necessary, moving forward in pretty much any job, right? I think students in journalism today should understand they don't need to know what's going on inside ChatGPT necessarily, but they should understand what is it that it can do, what is it that it cannot do, and how that might impact how they do their job. And at UMD, I think there's a lot of excitement around like designing programs for students to be prepared to have AI literacy, not only if they're in computer science, but in all sorts of disciplines, so that they're well prepared for the job market in the future.
Thanks for the great discussion. You mentioned some really interesting use cases, and I get excited when I think about how to use AI, specifically large language models for different tasks. But then when I think about doing research on that, and how long it might take from study design to implementation to writing up the results, I get really nervous because I think, oh, something's going to change in the models, and I don't have any window into that. And, is this going to be generalizable, or will the world have moved on? So just wondering, as researchers, given the time, how long it takes to implement these research projects, I'm just wondering if you had thoughts on whether it's still valuable to go down that road because we might uncover something that is generalizable long-term, or how should we be thinking about that? I wonder if you had thoughts.
Okay, so we're like all like, you want to go? Do you want to go? So my particular research where I'm looking at AI is in the context of currently asynchronous team shift handovers. And so we did like a simple AI versus ChatGPT, and it was 3.5, and obviously now we're at like 4. So I think it's okay for us in that what we're really studying is psychological responses to things like summarized data that's not always entirely accurate. And so that in and of itself is not going to be different in a year, I think, even if like the new models are better. But there may be other kinds of research that other people on the panel are doing where it's like, oh no, we have a new version of something.
I would say, for the kind of research I do, which is more focused on like the technology itself, there's a lot of value in just learning, where do these things work? Where do they break? Even if it's not the latest, shiniest model, there's still valuable things to learn. To the extent I can, I work with open models as opposed to the ones that are hidden behind APIs where, I don't know what's going on behind it, but it's a balance, and so sometimes use whatever the latest OpenAI model is, and I also compare it against like Llama or other open models, and I think there's value in that, but I do understand the pressure, like the time pressure and the feeling that everything's moving so fast, and it's tough to. It's a tough environment, but I remind myself that there's value in the slower work also.
Yeah, and just quickly to add to that is like working with different populations, right? Because I feel like certain AI research can be very like, yeah, in the labs that are in the industry labs, very closed door. And then when we do our research with different populations, really these critical kind of questions, it would still be relevant because it's kind of shaping, hopefully, the future models that are coming.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think there's a certain level of the model will show you the structure of the data in a way that maybe certain other approaches won't, and that you can study people that way. But like Susanna said, but you can't necessarily, like if you're studying ChatGPT and it's political opinions, that's not going to get you very far. But if you can use that system to answer a more generalizable question, I feel like that's a really valuable effort, even if the model, like we said, isn't the most recent one.
There are other questions. I see Renisa. Okay, yes.
Yeah, there's no one else. So I was wondering, bringing it back to the teams, what kind of skills that we developed early on through our childhood till adulthood to become an effective team member. So what kind of skills can we afford as a society to lose or to convert them into hobbies? Like, that typically happens in automation. Like right now, for example, if you are not able to cook, you don't have the skill of cooking, you can very much survive, especially in some societies, right? So if you don't have the skills, I don't know, to sew, you can still get yourself dressed and buy clothes. So I'm wondering, in terms of skills that are essential in becoming teams, which is an essential part of having societies. Do you think there are some skills that we can afford to either lose or convert them for some of us into hobbies? Just curious.
I just want to say, really good question. To buy more time to think. I know which ones we can't afford to lose, like the effort. I think like being part of a team, members being accountable and showing effort. And in some of my work, we've noticed that people who type to speak, when they use like generative models to complete a phrase that they edit, it saves them time, but they're so concerned that their partner, like romantic partner or a colleague, will think they didn't care enough to type it themselves. And even though it's more accurate or not more accurate, but faster, it can have a negative social consequence in their family dynamic. If they see the answer pop up and they choose it, they're like, will my daughter think I didn't want to spend my energy typing it for her? Even if the model is tuned to their own kind of style. So that's really interesting. That question of effort, I think, will be really important, but I don't know if it can become a hobby. I don't know. That's a question for you.
I can try if you're stuck. I can try. So Susan Campbell and I and a number of other people actually did a review on what does AI need to do to work in a human team, and it was really from the teamwork, like human teams perspective. And when I'm thinking of all the different aspects of this, like having a shared mental model or transactive memory systems, I can think of some of them which would be handy to have an AI that helps. So like transactive memory system is when I know that Susan is a cognitive psychologist and she knows things that I don't know, or I know that, Marin is a computer scientist, she knows how to build algorithms. I don't know this, but I know she knows it. There may be ways, I think people are looking into ways to like offload that to AIs so that you can kind of query your AI and it can remind you, but I don't think it means you would then never know it. It's more like when you have a calendar, you're like, I know I have some meetings today. I need to look up exactly what they are. But I think there's other elements of teamwork where if you're going to be interacting human to human at all, then you're going to have to be able to put together information, right? Like of, and you could get a system that supports you in putting together, like, how are they communicating? How am I receiving this information? You can get assistance, but you still have to sort of put that information together and think about what you want to say back. Even if, like, you have a system that's helping you, like, you have to evaluate that. Is it the right way to say it? Or is it soulless and awkward? Just to give examples of systems now, right? I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of human interaction that's not going to be a hobby. It's also just inherently enjoyable when it works well. So,
yeah. Although I don't know if y'all saw the article about people using AI for dating, where they're like using ChatGPT to generate like pickup lines, and then to carry on like conversations on Tinder or whatever. So I do feel like sometimes people want the system to support them in ways that it probably shouldn't support them. And there's a certain level where you feel more competent than you are when you've been assisted with something, because you feel like, I'm accomplished, I did this thing, but actually, part of that was the autocomplete helping me out. And so we do have to be careful, like in our appraisals of what we're doing, that we understand what we did and what the other system did.
Yeah, so I think this is an excellent question, and I had such a hard time thinking about it because I feel like it's just so hard to have a team that works well, right? If anything, we need to learn more skills, not forget them, to be productive team members. And I think a lot of that is not just about doing a good job at whatever the task is, but there's so much value in the interaction, in the relationship building, and so on. So in terms of measuring how an AI tool might help, it's not just how productive it makes us, but also, do people enjoy working together, and all these intangibles that do make a difference. So, but I do think like that what Susanna brought up earlier is perhaps where it is possible for AI to take more of a space. Like I tend to think of computers as, they're really good at recall, really good at processing large amounts of information. As humans, we're much better at precision, like making decisions with small amounts of information. And so perhaps that's where this complementarity can come in, where, you don't have to remember, we don't have each of us to remember individually as much information because we can rely more on the machine to do that for us. But we still actively contribute in the precision side of thing and making decision.
So I think with that, we actually are
We're
out of time. But thank you all very much for doing the panel. Thank you for asking questions.